Now, the same as the original figure here, I'm going to go ahead and just shadow him. So here's some cast shadow underneath his arms, which I think Marco did a great job with. By the way, Marco did a great job with a lot of this. But yeah, that really works. I don't need to change anything there. Here, I want to make sure to define the body properly according to the lighting that's already established. And, Marco's not necessarily wrong with the lighting that he'd initially picked, but it's inconsistent enough that I'm just not seeing it. So at that point, I need to make a decision and pick something. And I really highly recommend something Mark Silvestri recommended to me, and I didn't listen to at the beginning of my career, is to pick one light source. It helps so much if you just pick one light source while you're learning. Certainly, trying to figure out multiple light sources while you're still figuring out your anatomy and your composition and everything else, it can just lead to a lot of confusion. So pick a direction and just stick with it. You'll be much happier. And then as you go along and you get more comfortable, you can add more. But you'll find actually so many really great artists only ever stick to one light source for all of their work, and it's very effective. So definitely be circumspect about adding too many light sources. And I have to say, I find generally speaking, and I'm sorry, Marco, but it's definitely the case here. When I see a lot of multiple light sources going on, it's generally because there's actually really not really any light source. It's just very confused. So you're so much better off to use one light source that you're actually sure of and confident that you can get across than because these guys are standing on the ground and they're everything around them is casting a shadow. I think it would actually be good for them to be casting a shadow too. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw a shadow underneath them based on the lighting that I have established. There, I think that really kind of helps delineate things. And I can even, just for compositional purposes, I could drop a shadow down here, just close things in. I think that could really work. I like how Marco has the shadow cast up here, excuse me. How he has this shadow cast up here. It's just compositionally something that I'm always a fan of, and I think really works to center the action on what we're trying to look at. I try not to jump around too much in these videos, but I tend to jump around as I'm drawing just generally, and it's a tough thing to fight. All right. I think I basically got the figures drawn in. I'm going to define this wall, and this wall is the last piece that I really want to touch on, and it's something that uh, Marco's really having a little bit of trouble with. So I don't really see a perspective here, actually, which I'm not going to bother trying to fix right now, but I want to point out that it's always good to actually use real perspective. It makes a difference. But I'm just going to go ahead and show you how I always approach bricks. If I'm really close in on some bricks, then I'll have to actually draw each individual brick. For the most part, it's not necessary. I don't worry about being evenly spaced. I try not to go too crazy, but I find, especially if you want it to look like a dirty, dingy alley and you want it to look a little interesting, some bigger bricks and smaller bricks and odd shapes really can work. Generally speaking, I think odd shapes are a little bit more appealing to look at for just about anything. I'm going to do something that I do all the time in my actual drawing, and I'm just going to draw, maybe this is plaster here. And I do this because, again, it really breaks up the monotony of the shapes, but also this is some junk on the ground. I'm just going to quickly shadow it just to, I could do another piece right here, just draw the shadow from it. This really breaks up the monotony of the bricks and also gives me a lot less bricks to draw, which is great. Shadowing the undersides here just to give it the impression that it's a thick thing, and then finish the bricks up to it. Okay, and now that I've got that in, I can go ahead and do the vertical pieces. And I notice Marco's verticals are not entirely vertical. This one here kind of comes off like this, and then some of these are kind of coming out of parallel, and I definitely don't recommend allowing that to happen. You really want to be careful because it's very easy for a few things to ruin the illusion that you're creating with your perspective. And again, notice I'm making sure to not draw a line from one brick all the way down through another brick because that'll break it. But I'm not worrying about being consistent with my brick sizes just because it's just a little more visually interesting and really saves me the headache of trying to measure out bricks. And you can see I kind of connected that, so I'm just going to erase it. Try to be a little more careful. And I have to tell you, I've been complimented before for fading out my detail and not being as detailed everywhere in a picture, which can make it a little more interesting visually. But I didn't ever realize I was doing that. I was always just getting lazy. It's very difficult for me to keep up the energy drawing an equal level of detail everywhere on a picture. So as I get further away from my focal point, I just start to get a little looser and a little lighter and uh, a little less defined. And I think that can actually aid your picture if you do it in a calculated way. It's okay to be lazy, you just have to be smart lazy. Okay, so what I have now is most of the way there. And the final thing for me is just line weights really on the bricks. So if I go a little thicker here, it looks like that brick is actually a little recessed. So I'm gonna kind of just bounce things along, maybe make some of these upper pieces a little thicker, a little thinner, and it can, start to just give a lot of bounce and interest and, uh, some grunginess to what you're drawing. And I definitely can't stress enough that this is just not something you should ever leave to an inker to do for you. Too many of the inkers that could do this for you, they could just do it on their own artwork. If they're good enough to be able to really get this stuff across, they're good enough to draw their own pages, and they're not going to waste their time fixing your mistakes. I certainly wouldn't. And I'm getting a little bit lighter as I get closer to my figure here. I don't want to conflict with their with the actual figures. Okay, so I basically got everything pretty well defined here. Now I'm gonna go ahead and just do a little bit of rendering, just to bring this thing to completion, and then we'll have this wrapped up. And here comes just a little extra detail just to grunge up the bricks a little bit. Just make sure to be as random with it as possible. If there's any secret to it, that would really be it. You don't want to have the same kind of shape on every brick that you're drawing the same little piece of dirt. It can creep up on you faster than you expect. It really is a natural human tendency, and it's something you actively have to fight. I think maybe there are some artists out there that just naturally don't have that problem, but in my experience, it's all of us. We all will draw repetitive shapes and patterns unless we train our brain to not do it. So you have to be very, very aware of it, and not just in this, but leaves or anything really organic. You have to train yourself not to draw the same patterns over and over. And there always comes a point where it's much easier to see what you've got with any kind of underdrawing removed. So I can get in there and just clean up the details and make sure it's exactly what I'm looking for. Well, that's going to be a wrap. I'm going to finish right there, and hopefully that's helpful for you, Marco, and hopefully for the rest of you that are watching, this is also helpful. All right, well, thanks for watching. If you have any artwork that you'd like to submit, feel free, and maybe I'll pick it and do a tutorial based on what you're doing. Thanks again so much to Marco, and I will see you next week.